It is said that our Earth was formed about 4 billion years ago. And about 3.8 billion years ago, life began on Earth. For thousands of years, humans have crossed the entire Earth searching for traces of their ancestors. While asking themselves the question, where did we come from on Earth, humans did not look towards the sky, but in the depths of the Earth and the sea. They searched for their history. But as we went back in time through atoms, both our surprise and curiosity went away. And at one point we came to know that our distant ancestors must have given birth to us billions of years ago in the warm and safe shelter of the water present on the surface of the Earth. But is it so easy to believe this? Today we share the Earth with millions of other species of creatures. Some of these are close to us, who match us. But some are extremely unique and different. So different that our inner nature do not match at all. But science says that all the creatures living on Earth had the same ancestors. It is difficult for you and me to believe this and to blindly believe it. That is why today we will go on a journey where we will try to find the traces of our ancestors. This science will not only take you to distant history, but we will also get a chance to know the one from whom life was born. We will see the environment of the Earth billions of years ago. We will see those poisonous creatures who came at one time and destroyed the entire life from the Earth. We will go to the micro level and see that the same elements are present in a stone falling from space and our body. In this we will get to know the deepest of nature. In this we will know the secret of our life. Our life begins with such a rule of nature due to which we and you have reached here today. This rule is very harsh and ruthless. We call this rule the selection of nature or natural selection. This rule has been applicable on Earth since ancient times, ever since the foundation of life was laid here. Under this rule, all the creatures born on Earth got a chance to enjoy the beautiful nature of the Earth. Even before the time of dinosaurs, the struggle to keep themselves alive has been going on among the creatures. The weak creatures were killed by the ferocious animals, and the ferocious ones were killed by the wrath of nature. But in all this, the species which kept in sync with the environment around them was successful in saving its existence. It is not that only strength was used in keeping in sync with nature, but the intelligence of the creatures and the art of adapting themselves according to the environment gave the strength to some special species to survive in that harsh environment of the Earth. The shape, structure, color, and other features of the creatures proved to be the most important in saving their existence on Earth. This thing can be easily explained by these newborn babies born from turtle eggs. These babies who have just come out of the eggs have to walk on the sand and reach the waves of the sea while escaping from the predators. Now, among these, those children who are weak and lazy will become prey to hunters, but only those children who are agile and strong will be able to touch the waves of the sea and then start their life in the sea water. That is, nature chose children with certain special qualities. Although this rule of nature is ruthless, but this has always been happening, and due to this rule, different types of species of organisms were able to develop on Earth. Although life has existed on Earth for billions of years, roughly speaking, for about 4 billion years, but where did it start? This is the most important question. Water rules most of the Earth. The vast empire of the sea is spread all over the Earth, and inside it, very small creatures were born billions of years ago. Today we know many such creatures living in the sea whose nature is surprising in itself. From transparent jellyfish like glass to fish as big as a ship. All these are wonders of the world of the sea. The distant ancestors of you, me, and all the creatures living on Earth were once born inside this water. The vast ocean reservoir on the chest of the Earth. It was like a laboratory for nature, in whose solution nature did many types of experiments regarding life, which later led to the birth of complex life. It is difficult to believe that our distant ancestors would have ever come out of water and started walking on land, and what evidence does science have that can link our history with these aquatic creatures and prove that our ancestors were once born in this water? Many parts of our body still have those features that must have developed inside water in our ancestors billions of years ago. This is me and you, yes, at this time in our mother's womb, we are only 24 days old, and at this stage, these gilt slits are present near our head, which are also called pharyngeal pouches. Surprisingly, these same gilt slits are also found in the undeveloped baby fish, which later on turn into fish. whereas in humans, these become a part of the face, ears, and head. Similarly, in the 5th or 6th week of the womb, a tail also develops in the human child, which is a part of our body at that time, but in further development, it turns into the lower part of the head. Apart from this, from the study of fossils, DNA, and other information, we come to know that we are a small branch of life, in which life developed in many different forms and different directions, but all this started from a small seed. But amidst all this, another question arises in the mind: that why did life first arise inside water? Let us take a look at the history of the Earth for this. About 3.8 billion years ago. At this time, the atmosphere of the Earth was very harsh. There was no trace of oxygen here, and the atmosphere was also thin. The layer to protect from the deadly rays of the sun was also not present at this time. Ultraviolet rays, dangerous for life, used to scatter on our new planet without any restriction. The entire atmosphere of the Earth seemed impossible for the growth of life. With time, the volcanoes erupting on the Earth and the meteors raining from the sky disrupted the upper surface of the Earth. Compared to such harsh conditions in outer space, the environment inside the water on Earth was much safer. And in this safe environment of water, life flourished on Earth for the first time. However, in what form life first arose on Earth is still a mystery. It is said that even at that time, small molecules that combined together to create life were present inside the water, from which organisms made of single cells must have been created. But understanding the first life that arose on Earth is perhaps not that easy. It is impossible to explain it in one line. How did life come on Earth? To understand this properly, we will have to look at other aspects of science as well. Many questions will have to be considered, such as what is a living being? Which characteristics decide whether someone is alive or not, because there are many on Earth whose characteristics are similar to ours, but they are still not alive. For example, clouds can move from one place to another like us. They can also reduce their size like us. But we know that clouds do not have any life of their own, that is, clouds are not alive like us. And what is this single or double cell life? What is present in them that makes them living beings? If we talk about life, then we can differentiate all living beings on the basis of two types of characteristics. First, those which are made up of single cell, and second, those which are made up of many cells joining together. We ourselves are made up of trillions of small cells. These cells of our body are so small that 10 cells can fit together on the tip of a pen. If understood easily, then many cells join together to form small tissues. Layers of tissues join together to give shape to a particular part of our body, such as heart, kidneys, skin, and when all these different tissues join together to form a complete structure, then that living being is identified as a human or an animal. On the other hand, in the creatures made up of single cell, only one cell is for their identification. Although these cells cannot be seen without a microscope, but still they are the smallest form of life in themselves, that is, we can call them life. But surprisingly, these cells are not the smallest in themselves, rather they also have different parts inside them whose work is divided among themselves and whose joint activities together form a single cell. Let us now know what are those things inside these cells that combine together to give birth to a life. For example, let us take a cell of our body. First comes its layer, which we also call cell membrane. This gives the outer cover to the cell. That is, it works as a membrane. We can also call it the skin of the cell. This is not an ordinary membrane, rather it recognizes the nutrients and allows them to enter, whereas it blocks the way for the elements that pose a threat to it. Apart from this, it also allows waste to go out from inside the cells. After this comes the liquid filled inside the cell, which we call cytoplasm. It is not that it is filled with liquid only, but it has some parts that carry out important functions. Its special parts make some special elements like protein, and cells carry out most of their chemical processes by using protein. Some of its essential parts convert small molecules of food into such material which is necessary for the energy and growth of cells. The nutrients made from these are transferred throughout the cell with the help of special tubes. That is, the cells present in our body have their own system which keeps on growing continuously by taking the necessary things from the food we eat. And finally comes the nucleus, which we can also call the brain of the cell. This nucleus present in the middle of the cell works like the control center of the cell. It takes care of the growth of the cell. Along with this, its job is also to see that the cell divides and gives birth to other cells like itself. That is, the cell cannot survive without these parts. The cell makes the necessary things to keep itself alive through these parts, and all these different parts together form a cell. Now the thing to understand here is that the cell, which is the smallest form of life, that is, the one which science considers to be alive, also has within itself such important parts that work for it. Now the question arises whether the cell is alive in itself. If we remove the nucleus from inside a cell, will it be able to remain alive on its own? Does the nucleus membrane or cytoplasm not have any structure on their own? Are they alive on their own? So the answer is no. These parts of the cell certainly make up the whole cell together. The cell can be called alive in itself with all these, but these parts alone do not have any life of their own. They are recognized as a life only when they are together. But why am I talking to you about all these things? You will definitely get the answer to this because it is important for us to know scientifically what life is in itself. Only then we will be able to unveil its deep mysteries. But now let us look at the parts of these small cells in more depth. You will be surprised to know that all the parts of the cells are not the smallest units in themselves, but are made up of even smaller macromolecules. Inside the cell, the nucleus, cytoplasm, and the rest of the parts are made up of other elements found in nature, such as carbohydrates, protein, lipids, and nucleic acid. So, is this macromolecule the smallest unit? No, these two are made up of particles many times smaller than these in size. Let us take protein for example. Protein is the most important element for the growth of our cells, but what is it made of? We get amino acids in thousands of numbers from protein. These amino acids combine with each other in a specific pattern to form a specific type of protein. It is surprising that 20 types of amino acids combine with each other to form thousands of different types of proteins that are completely different from each other in different shapes. So, are these amino acids the smallest units of our body? No. All kinds of macromolecules are made up of units even smaller than these in size. Yes, you must have heard about atoms and its parts neutron, electron, and proton. It is from the combination of these different types of atoms that the macromolecules that make up our body are formed. Let us understand this chain easily in a straight line. The body of any living creature is made up of different parts. For example, heart, brain, etc. All these organs are made up of layers of tissues. These tissues are made up of small cells. These cells are formed from elements like protein. Protein is made from macromolecules like amino acids. And macromolecules are made up of different types of atoms together. A combination of life is complicated in itself, which we have now understood in general. By solving this problem, we come to know which small particles life is made up of. But this does not tell us how life would have originated on Earth for the first time, because to create a living creature, another living creature is needed. So where would the first living creature have come from in the world? Can science tell how life began? There is no perfect explanation in this subject till now. But groups of scientists and explorers around the world are engaged day and night in unraveling the layers of this mystery, and we are going to know the discoveries and explanations made by these people so that we can understand where life originated on Earth. According to Darwin's theory, this form of life started from an organism born in a very simple form billions of years ago and gradually became complex with time. That is, the shape of the organisms born in the beginning, their organs, and the chemical process going on inside them were not as difficult to understand as it is about today's organisms. Initially, their qualities and the activities going on inside them were simple, but as time passed, the new organisms born started changing in comparison to their ancestors. New organs and new qualities started developing in them. To understand this more easily, let us look at an observation of science. Whenever any living creature gives birth to its offspring, the offspring is born with some new qualities. The children born in whose new qualities do not fit the environment, the chances of survival of such children are reduced. That is, the children give up due to the harshness of the environment as soon as they are born and die by the age of giving birth to children like themselves. Let us understand this more easily. Have you ever wondered why the color of locusts is always green? There must be a reason behind this. Let us assume, for example, that initially there must have been more than one species of locusts. But among these locusts living among the plants, the locusts whose color was green helped in escaping from predators. Being green in color, they were not easily visible to predators among the plants, and they were more safe than other locusts. With time, the locusts of other colors were hunted rapidly, and only the green locusts survived. Later, the green locusts gave birth to their offsprings, which kept on making changes in themselves to make themselves more safe. The thing to note here is that the number of such children who were not able to adjust to the environment due to their shortcomings kept decreasing, and they grew in more numbers than the children born normally. The result of which was that the species born with the qualities to adjust to the environment kept on flourishing in greater numbers. The qualities of these organisms changed so much later that they developed themselves as a new species, and it became difficult to identify them from their ancestors. This gradual change was called the evolution of organisms, and in the development of billions of years on Earth, life developed in countless forms. The records of fossils found on Earth make its authenticity even more strong. With the help of the study of fossils, as we go back, it becomes easier to understand the nature of organisms. And on this basis, scientists concluded that life must have originated in the form of a very simple cell about 3 billion years ago. But even now this question arises. Where did that simple cell that was born in the beginning come from? Because the nature of the simple bacteria present in front of us today is so complex that it is impossible for it to flourish in one step. That is, it will take a long time for even such a simple form of life to develop. So where did those small and simple cells that were born first come into the world from? One logic of this is that the organisms that were born first and could give birth to organisms like themselves would not have been born through evolution. Because the reason for this, for evolution to take place in organisms, it is necessary for them to reproduce. If they do not reproduce their species, then evolution will not take place in them, so we will have to look for other ways to understand in what form the first life that was born on Earth was born. An idea on the basis of which scientists are making new discoveries about life and have been successful to some extent in solving the mystery of life. This idea says that life was born from chemistry. Everything in the world is made up of very small particles. Even the air and light that we see are made up of such small particles that we cannot see them with our eyes. These small particles combine together to form molecules, and these molecules then combine together to form a structure or organism. The whole world, rather the entire universe, is made up of such small particles coming together, and studying their behavior is the study of chemistry. But here we will talk about that part of chemistry which says that life is suddenly born when these small particles come together. The chemistry that gives birth to life tells us some important things, the most important of which is that it is necessary for the different small particles or parts that make up life to work together as a team, which we call metabolic pathways. As we had also known earlier that different parts of the cell work together for the growth of the cell. Even in the cell of a common plant, there are many such processes going on in which different parts work together for the growth of the cell, converting food molecules into energy through different processes. These are some of the tasks which are a part of metabolism. And this is the most important thing in the chemistry of life. Life cannot exist without metabolism. The entire system of cell growth and producing the energy required for it is called metabolism, and without metabolism, the continuation of life is impossible. Another important thing that the chemistry of life tells us is that living cells are made up of certain molecules, some important elements that make up the body of living beings such as amino acids, sugar, etc. These molecules are together and form a structure much more complex than their nature, such as gene, protein, cell membrane, etc., and further this chain continues, which gives birth to a life. In ancient times, it was believed that these molecules that make up our body are found only in living beings. Apart from this, another puzzle of life has been troubling everyone: how all the activities happening inside living beings keep them alive. For ancient science, these things were like unsolved mysteries. They believed that power was behind this mystery. But in 1828, a German chemist named Friedrich Wahn created urea in the lab. Urea, which is found in our urine but is an element created by the body of a living being, can be created by experiments done in the lab. This thing brought a new understanding of life and science at that time. Elements of our body, about which it was believed that their presence is possible only in living beings, this thing was challenged by the creation of urea in the lab, and a new kind of preparation came to the fore. There is no power behind the creation and maintenance of life, but chemistry is behind it. Different elements present in nature combine together and make some chemical reactions, which gives birth to life, and other similar chemical reactions provide the necessary things for this new life to survive, such as energy. In the modern world, the activity of many types of molecules and cells has been created in the lab, which has almost eliminated the concept of that mysterious power from life. And everything has suggested that a living being can be born by mixing the lifeless elements found in nature. Researchers have recently discovered some such essential elements for life inside meteorites, such as amino acids and sugar. Rocks that fell to the earth from space in the form of small stones. The presence of elements necessary for life inside them is proof that we can find such special elements anywhere in the entire universe, and perhaps they were present on the earth billions of years ago. It is surprising how nature creates a living being by mixing some lifeless elements which are not alive in themselves. Apart from this, science has discovered another process in which certain types of molecules were given an energy source, and after some time, when they were observed, it was found that all those lifeless molecules were combining with each other using energy and giving birth to molecules that were even more complex than themselves and in nature. With the passage of time, experiments conducted in the lab also proved that a whole chain of chemical reactions takes birth on its own according to the conditions provided by nature, and like living cells, a process for generating energy is also formed inside them. In similar discoveries, scientists have also seen many natural miracles in which certain types of molecules combine together and form a shape like the membrane of the cell. Some even form such structures that look like the threads of our DNA. That is, we have got hold of some of the difficult puzzles of life, but it would be wrong to say that science has found out the last secret of life. Work is still going on this. In what form would life have first come on Earth? Was its nature like that of today's living beings? These questions are still very difficult puzzles for science. How do certain types of lifeless elements start working together as a team and take the complexity of their joint work to such an extent that a very complex system like genetic code is born? Something similar must have happened billions of years ago when a living being suddenly took birth due to the mixing of lifeless molecules in the safe shelter of water, and this creature proved to be the seed of life on Earth, on whose different branches life was born in the form of trillions of leaves in billions of years. Till now we have come to know how life must have flourished inside water for the first time. The first microorganisms were born, which later proved to be the ancestors of all the creatures living on Earth, and in these very organisms the first exercise of formation of our complex DNA must have started in some deep sea or lake. We have understood how life started on Earth for the first time. Let us move ahead now. Although life may have originated on Earth in many different forms, but a special kind of organisms did the feat of changing the nature of the Earth and changed the Earth forever. This stone-like structure formed by the accumulation of microorganisms present on the coasts of Western Australia is the oldest and unique in itself. They are called stromatolites. They are home to extremely tiny organisms called cobacteria. This bacteria releases a sticky substance on which sand and sediment stick and take the form of a stone-like structure. These stones present in water can be billions of years old because stromatolites are one of the first forms of life on Earth. They make their food from carbon dioxide and sunlight in water and release oxygen in this process, and they have been doing this for billions of years. The age of the oldest stromatolites present on Earth has been recorded to be around 3 billion years. But these calm-looking stones had once extinct almost all the life present on Earth. Their group had put a poisonous gas in the Earth's atmosphere which ended the life of most of the creatures present at that time, and that poisonous gas was oxygen. Yes, you will be surprised to hear this, but this is true. Till about 3 billion years ago, the level of oxygen in the Earth's atmosphere was not as high as it is today. At that time, less oxygen was present than the amount of oxygen in the atmosphere, and the nature of the creatures living on Earth was somewhat different from the creatures on Earth. they did not all thrive on oxygen. It is not that stomatodes were not producing oxygen at that time, but at that time there was a quantity of iron on the Earth due to which most of the oxygen released was getting mixed with iron and turning into iron oxide, i.e. iron rust. But as the quantity of iron started decreasing with time, a part of the oxygen started entering the atmosphere and on the Earth. The amount of oxygen started decreasing, which created a global crisis, and oxygen proved to be poisonous for most of the creatures of that time. Then it seemed as if life on Earth had come to an end. But it is impossible to completely destroy anything, and yet the same thing happened. Some unique organisms survived on Earth which survived in the presence of oxygen. And from then on, such a branch of life was born whose basis was oxygen. Such organisms were born on Earth which survive on oxygen. By thriving on oxygen, very unique and amazing organisms were born in the history of Earth, which includes millions of years old dinosaurs up to 2 feet, 100 feet long, and blue whales up to 90 feet. A change that came billions of years ago changed the nature of the Earth, and life flourished on Earth anew. The story of life that we heard today was a very small part of our journey. There are many more questions in our curious mind which constantly asks us questions. Whose new journeys we have to cover in future also. Think how it would have been if life was growing on some other gas instead of oxygen on Earth. Would those organisms be like us? And if life is made by the coming together of inanimate objects, then in what form would it be in other corners of the universe?